Yes, please.
What is going on, everybody? Oh, look at Jen's here.
Yeah.
Jen Wood. Good to see you. What's going on, everybody? How's
Hi,
everybody doing tonight?
everyone.
We are super, super excited about this episode of Creators Who Crush. Um, if you guys don't know, if not for the Murdaws, we're not here right now, right, babe? I mean, do you remember the day? How did we get into the Murdaws? Why don't you tell the folks who don't know the story?
Um, well, Jay never liked true crime, and I have always been a consumer of things like episodes of Dateline and specials, documentaries, watching trials. He has never been into that, but the Murdaugh story, I thought that he might want to watch that with me. So we watched it. The first thing we watched, I think, was the HBO um, movie or
Low
whatever,
Country, right? Was that what it was called?
Low Country. Yes. So that was the first thing we watched. And then he was like in a rabbit hole of the Murdaughs. Every time I would be talking about something that was going on in true crime, he would say, but what's going on with that lawyer and his family? What's going on with that? And then, of course, he got very into the trial. He was kind of on a break from work. He was on vacation from his corporate job, and he started tweeting to his very small amount of followers. I think he had like
300.
300. He had 300 followers, started tweeting about how much he couldn't stand Alec and, just different little things that he noticed in the courtroom. And Mandy Matney retweeted him. Mandy Norell retweeted him, and some other people from the
Jen Wood.
yes. And so that was really cool because that got him some steam, and that's why we're where we are.
That's why we're Bo, and that's why we're J Bo Nation. And there's not many people who know more about the entire situation. I mean, the man just released a book, Michael DeWitt. We are so excited to speak to him now. He is a journalist, an editor, storyteller, humorist, historian, um, and low country lifer, folks, South Carolina. He also has a podcast, The Wicked South. And again, he just released the book, The Fall of the House of Murdaugh. It is in the description, and our mods are sharing it. So without further ado, Michael DeWitt. Hey, Michael, how you doing?
Hello, J-Bo Nation.
How's it going?
Oh man, it's a lovely cold day in the 14th Circuit.
So, I mean, well, go ahead, babe. Go ahead. Go, go, go.
Well,
We
is
have
it
so much I want to talk to, but go, 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 go.
I know. Well, we want to hear a little bit about just your background first. So let's start with that. Tell us a little bit about you and your background.
I was born and raised right here in Hampton County, which, as you know, is the epicenter of the whole Murdaugh mess. The Murdaughs are from here. In a sense, these are our Murdaughs that we have unleashed on the world. Um, and It's a small place. Everybody knows everybody. I went to school with Alex's little brother. Alex's mother taught me reading and English in middle school. So this whole community is connected to this family, and I'd always wanted to be a writer. So I had a midlife crisis and left a well-paying job to become a reporter for the Hampton Guardian. And for the past 20 years, I've become even more acquainted with the Murdaughs. And um, it's, I can spend an hour talking about my writing career, but that's my basic background. Just I was born and raised on a small family farm here in Hampton County, in southern Hampton County. Um, and My family's been here about 300 years.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. So I mean, that must have been a bit you said you had a high paying job and you changed over to be a journalist. What first of all, what was that like and what made you make that decision to do that?
Like I said, I'd always wanted to be a writer. I was in the eighth grade, and we had an essay contest at our school, and I wrote a humor piece about my mother and how, every boy goes through this phase where he doesn't like his mom and, or whatever, or he doesn't like authority. And so I wrote a funny piece about my mother and, how horrible her cooking was, and, how she looked when she woke up in the morning with her. But apparently, I had a little bit of talent because I was using literary devices. I was comparing her cooking to, um, to a witch stirring a pot on the stove. And, the comparing when she woke up from a nap, comparing it to a bear coming out of hibernation with her hair sticking all up and unshaven legs bristling underneath the bathrobe. And it was quite horrible for to thing to write about your mother, but it won a contest. We I think that same year I was runner up for the Lieutenant Governor's Award for Excellence in Composition, and my little brother actually won the award, and he was in a different grade, different division. Um, but they liked the story so much they put the story and my award on the wall of the middle school. And my mother later went back to college, just like I did, went back to college late in life, but changed careers. My mother actually became a teacher, and every day she walked the halls of that school and she had to look at that award on the wall and look at that story on the wall. And at first she was still angry, but then it turned into pride, I think. So I guess I'm doing what I was meant to be doing, I think.
What a great story. Go ahead, babe.
So you basically grew up alongside of so many of the people that we got used to watching on TV. And you said, now, Miss Libby was your teacher or
That's
helped
right.
you with.
That's right. Back then it was one class, so grammar, English, literature, it was all one class, and she was my teacher for maybe 2 years of middle school.
So what? So I'm trying to I wanted to ask you like your first experience with the murder, like a murder, but like is it like kind of like when like reach a certain age in that community where like everyone is just made aware of the murders? Like how is that someone who's lived there with them and them having such an influence? When like do you first become conscious of the murders and their influence over the entire community?
Well, like I say, in middle school, we thought of we didn't think of Miss Libby as the solicitor's wife. We thought of her, she was Miss Murdoch. She was a teacher. Um, in high school, we became a little more aware because the Murdochs were known for their parties. They used to party at Alameda. If you were in the in crowd, if you were one of the popular kids, or if you were on the football team, whatever, on Friday nights after the games, you go to Alameda and there'd be a big bonfire and kegs of beer, and um, the they were known for that, but it was also whispered that if you if you were at the Alameda party, you didn't have to worry about getting a DUI if you were coming from the Murdoch party. They just kind of let those kids alone.
Wow.
Um, so that's when we kind of came aware, and I was never one of the popular kids, so I was never attended a party. I was just it would you go to school on Monday morning, that's all you heard about. Somebody did something crazy at the bonfire party, somebody making out. I think there was a story one year about a boy and a girl just getting busy right on the hood of a car or something out there. Just crazy high school stuff you might hear on American Pie or some kind of stuff. And so that's you came back and you hear these kind of stories. It wasn't until I went to work for the newspaper, and I guess it sounds like something they use in robot science fiction, but I became more self-aware of my community when I became a writer for the newspaper. It was now part of the job. Now, I'd never been to a council meeting or a chamber of commerce function or anything, and now here I am, uh, staff writer for the local paper, entry level reporter. They started me off, I think, back then making like $9 an hour. Um, you know, uh, so I became self aware of the community and what's going on, and then I became much more acquainted with the law firm, the Murdochs, the impact they were having on our community. Um, it was quite a education. If you want to really learn about your hometown, work for your local newspaper for a couple of months, and you will learn everything you need to know.
Wow. God, babe.
What type of stories did you cover for the paper?
Well, I'm trying to sit back and chill and let you guys ask questions because when I get started talking, my wife says I never shut up. So,
No, no, go
No,
ahead. We
you
love
don't
to hear
have
you. That's what everyone's here to hear you talk.
Yes.
Go, go, go.
Yes.
um, the so you're going to hear me say things that might sound counterintuitive, like I'm not a true crime person. I never wanted to be a true crime person. Well, I never wanted to be a journalist. I never wanted to be a reporter. I wanted to be a writer. And when you're in a small town like Hampton, you know there's only really one way to kind of get started, and that's the local newspaper. So I actually started writing for free for a little small monthly tabloid, one of these papers that they give away for free at the gas station and the grocery stores, which it's a mighty fine little community papers. But I actually started writing for free, and then the editor of the Guardian saw my work and said, "Hey, would you like to leave your good paying job and come do this for a salary?" And I just had my wife had just had a newborn baby. Our first child was a week old, and they said, "Hey." Actually, no. Actually, he had just been born, and they said, "Hey, you want to come to work?" And I said, "Well, let me stay home with the baby for about a week, and then and play with the baby, and then I'll come to work." So that's how long I've been doing this. My kid's 19 in college, and I've been doing this 20 years. But a, a staff writer for a community paper has to write about everything. You'll write about politics. You'll write about sports. You'll write about grandma's favorite pound cake recipe. You name it. And but my passion was Southern humor, and my passion was the outdoors. And I grew up. I was kind of a weird, nerdy kid. I'd go everywhere I went. I carried a brown paper Piggly Wiggly grocery bag full of books, encyclopedias, whatever. And I played with outdoors. I hunted. I fished. But when I wasn't hunting or fishing, I was reading a book. We didn't sit in front of a TV in the country. Your parents and grandparents wouldn't allow it. They'd run you outside. So when I got tired of playing, I'd read a book. And but Louis Grizzard was always one of my favorites. Now you guys are up north. I don't know how much you know about Louis Grizzard, but he is one of the greatest Southern humorists. He wrote for the Atlanta Journal Constitution. He wrote many books. I was also a fan of an outdoor humorist who wrote for Field and Stream magazine called Patrick McManus. And I just wanted to be an outdoor writer, and I wanted to be the next Louis Grizzard. I wanted to be the Louis Grizzard of the Low Country. And so, in the course of covering politics and doing all these things at the paper, I started writing a weekly column, just Southern humor, just raising your family in the South, just anything down home Southern humor. I started writing about the outdoors, and I can kind of fast forward a little bit to some of this because I know you guys want to hear more about Murdoch, I'm sure.
No, we want to hear this too. No.
Hear you.
We want to hear about you. You're a creator who crushes. We want to hear about you. We're going to get into that, but take your time.
Yeah, don't worry.
Well, give the people what they want, I guess, is what I've kind of learned. But I had actually attained status as a national level writer before all of this happened. I was writing for a statewide wildlife magazine, South Carolina Wildlife. I was writing for an international hunting magazine, Sporting Classics. My humor column was being syndicated from coast to coast, from Cape Cod to California. I just reached that national level as a syndicated humor columnist. And I was working on my third book. I've already published two before all this happened. I was working on my third book, which was going to be the greatest Southern humor book of all time to rival that of Louis Grizzard. And then the murders happened. And I haven't written another, to my memory, since the boat crash. I haven't written another humor column, and I don't think I've written another outdoor column because I've been so busy in covering this case. And and just kind of embedded in the middle of this case.
Do you miss it? Because that's quite a contrast to go from writing that humor to going into this deep, heavy stuff. I mean, do you miss writing the humor stuff? Like, you know?
Oh, absolutely. My wife and I was starting to experiment with fiction, and I'd written and published a couple of fiction pieces. The My wife had been telling me that, hey, the outdoor humor, people don't hunt and fish like they used to. You need to write a novel. You need to write about a novel about somebody getting killed and a murder mystery or something. That's what's going to sell, you know. And my wife's a lot smarter than I am, and
Mine
from
too.
time to time, yeah. And so I was kind of on the verge of transitioning. Was never going to give up humor and the outdoors, but I wanted to do more storytelling. I wanted to get it more into fiction. And this came along, and at first I kind of resented it, and I always intend to go back. But I think this has been a good transition for me. I think uh, when this is over, if it's ever over, I'm gonna take something from it. I'm gonna start writing fiction inspired by true crime. I've got some big plans, and we can go into that more.
Yeah.
But it's always, to me, like I said, I've never been a true crime fan. It always seems like it strikes close to home. It doesn't give me pleasure to write about Alex Murdaugh murder and his family. It doesn't give me pleasure to talk to these victims and report how they feel betrayed and all this. But with fiction, a fiction writer can make the murder as gruesome as he wants, or he can add, grisly details, or even a dark sense of humor. And as from a storytelling point of view, that's where I want to be. So I'm going to take something from this. I'm never going to give up the humor, whether it be just wholesome family humor or dark Southern Gothic. But I'm definitely going to take something from this, and I may murder a few characters, but it'll be in a fictional sense.
I was just thinking before you go, babe, but like you were probably writing stuff before you got into the murders, like that I personally learned about during the trial, which is like shooting these boars that are apparently these pigs that are like everywhere. Like I had never that is like I had never heard of that before. So is that kind of the stuff that you were talking about in your prior columns and stuff like that?
Yeah, I've done a lot of articles on wild boar hunting, deer hunting, things of that nature. Fishing was more my specialty, but I did do a number of pieces, and there was even a piece about a local. Um, when you think of your local butcher in New York City or wherever, we have our local grocery stores, but we also have deer processors here. This is an area that deer hunting is one of our biggest tourist attractions. People come from Florida, Canada, wherever to hunt white-tailed deer, because I think South Carolina has one of the longest deer hunting seasons in the country. It starts earlier, and I think it goes a little later. And we have a crazy high population of deer and wild hogs. So people come from all over to hunt, and we have deer processors, and all they do is take these wild animals and cut them up and do like you would in a butcher. You might make sausage or cut them into roast or whatever. And I actually did a story about a deer processor that his wife would take and this is kind of grisly, but she would take the antlers and the skulls and decorate them and paint them and sell them, and it was some great art. So I've done some interesting stories, and we can kind of throw this out there before we get to trial, if you want to talk about that. But I sat every day in that courtroom for 6 weeks of that murder trial, and I sat beside people from New York, California. I sat with the producers of Dateline. I sat with Valerie Bauerlein from the Wall Street Journal. We called it Authors Row. I sat with Valerie and Jason Ryan, the author of Jackpot. And some of these out of town people, when I first met them, we're deep South. We call these people Yankees, and so I first met these people. I was subconsciously thinking these are going to be just a bunch of arrogant Yankees, and I'm going to have to elbow my way in here and fight to do my job. And it was a cultural learning experience for me. I learned that these are some mighty fine people from all over the country came to Walterboro to cover this case, but we learned from each other. There were things that were said during the trial, like cell phone technology and things of that nature, and I'm just totally ignorant. And I had to ask Haley Barber, the Dateline producer, what does that mean? What does that mean? And then when they got to talking about hog hunting and shotguns and rifles, she'd lean over to me and be like, "Hey, Michael, what's the difference between a shotgun and a rifle?" So we actually learned and grew together and shared our cultural experiences during that trial, and things like hunting and shooting were a big part of that.
Very cool. Before Babe goes, I got to highlight this comment from Teresa Smith Scott. He's a great guy. Michael's new book is enthralling. So much history of the area and the people. We're sharing the link, folks. Get the book. It just came out. You're going to want to check that out. Sorry, go ahead.
I love Teresa.
Do you was it like a lightning rod moment when you found out about the murders? And do you remember your reaction?
Absolutely. This happened in Colleton County, not in Hampton, so I didn't hear about it that night. I woke up first thing and the next morning and heard about it, and I was thinking a lot of the same things that most people were thinking, that this is in some way related to the boat crash. That I'll be honest, we can share. We now know it's not true, but we can. I don't mind sharing how I felt and how most people felt. Not to say that anybody on the boat or their families did anything wrong, but we were all kind of thinking that this is some kind of backwoods justice. That somebody, kin, friend, somebody connected to that boat crash has waited 2 years and decided that since the courts are not going to bring justice, we're going to do it. And it was only until the murder trial that we learned that that's what Alex Murdaugh wanted people to think, that that's why his own son had to die. And according to his mind, his twisted mind, that the world needed to think that vigilantes came for Paul, and Maggie happened to be there, and Alex was a poor victim, and we don't need to look at his finances anymore, that he's now a victim. But yeah, that's what everybody thought, that somehow this was, and I even heard people say unkind words like, this is karma, and I certainly wasn't thinking that, but I was certainly thinking along the lines of backwoods justice.
So talk about the book. So is this all like what are we? What's gonna, when people get that book? What are they gonna get? What are they reading about? What are they gonna learn in your book that just came out?
Well, in the first book, when I say the first book, Wicked Hampton County was actually my third book. This book, Follow the House of Murdoch, is my fourth book. But in terms of Murdoch related, in the first book, Wicked Hampton County, it's a history of Hampton, and it includes an overview of the Murdoch family history. Just a little taste. This book is all about the Murdochs, but I tried to write it not as a true crime thriller, which you certainly could. You could certainly fill volumes with just the stuff that had happened from the murders to the trial. I wanted this to be a complete look at the Murdoch dynasty. The title kind of says it all. It's the fall of the House of Murdoch. And I start, and as far as the timeline goes, I started at the end of the Civil War, when one of the Murdoch ancestors was supposedly a Confederate war hero and came back to the Low Country and made his fortune. So I take it from there, and I travel with the first Randolph Murdoch Sr., who started a law firm, who first became solicitor of the 14th Circuit, and what a great talented attorney he was. And then I go to Buster, his son. When I say Buster, I mean Randolph Murdoch Jr., and what a complicated, controversial guy he was, and all the charges against him and allegations. He was involved in the moonshine conspiracy. He was accused of the same things Alex Murdaugh was. He was accused of stealing from clients. He was accused of tax evasion. The only difference between him and Alex is he was slick and powerful, and he got away with it all, where Alex ultimately hasn't. So it's an epic. And the way I wrote this, A better writer than I might have done something different, but I didn't feel like this story would be served by a chronological plot. So I wrote the first part of this book in a twin parallel plot line. I have one modern chapter, one historical chapter, one modern chapter, one historical chapter. So you start with the boat crash, and in between the events of the boat crash going into the murder, you kind of learn about the family in alternating chapters. So by the time you get to Alex Murdaugh and the murders, you're now well acquainted with the background of what caused all of this, the boat crash. And you're also well acquainted with the family and how Alex Murdaugh's family rose to power. So now, when you read the chapters about the murder and the trial and the financial indictments, now you know the backstory. Now you know how Alex Murdaugh came to be. Now you know how the murders came to be, and that's the way I wrote it. And I hope I did a great job. The original version was more than 70,000 words, and we had to cut it down a little bit. But there was so much history. Each one of these men. Think about it, the 14th Circuit is a 5-county area, and these men were the chief prosecutors in this circuit for 85 years, right at 86 years. So every major crime, every murder, every sexual assault, every major drug case, these men were the prosecutors. So just to hear just to read about the bad guys they put away would fill a volume by itself.
Kind of makes me think of Judge Newman when he was talking at the sentencing about, how many people they put away, who probably got much worse sentencing than Alex himself got. I don't know. It just made me think of that. But yeah, go ahead.
If you want to read a book about how evil this entire family is, if you want to read a book about they're just horrible people and this whole area is a hotbed of corruption, then this isn't the book for you. If you want to read a true factual book that portrays these characters as real people, they did great things, they did horrible things. They upheld the law, they broke the law. Isn't that what human nature is? We have a little bit of good in us and a little bit of bad. And it's only when the evil completely overpowers the good, in the case of Alex, that you truly have an evil person. And so if I get any criticism at all about this book, I hope it's because I portray the Murdaughs as real people, just like I portrayed the victims as real people. And if I'm wrong for writing the truth, then so be it. But I don't defend anyone. I don't defend any bad behavior. I just offer the reader a glimpse into who they are. Little snippets about how the father took the son into court. These boys, generation by generation, sat in the courtroom with their daddy, watched their daddy do brilliant lawyer stuff, and they went on to become brilliant lawyers. And then ultimately, while bending the rules, abusing power, breaking the law from time to time, but ultimately, one little red-headed boy in that generation named Alex Murdaugh brought the whole house down.
It's crazy. Catherine says, "I'm ordering the book. Excellent, excellent, excellent." And we're posting in there. Eve post books, and I think you tweeted. Is there some sort of deal if you sign up for? I thought I saw something that is there some sort of discount if you sign up for?
That's right. The site crashed, went down over the weekend. We've got such a high volume. I don't know if that's directly related to it, but the website's down.
I bet it
today.
is. I bet
That's
it is.
awesome.
Look at you.
We're not saying that's what happened. It could be a number of things, but they did tell me that they've never had this much volume on their website ever.
Yes.
And
Yay.
they're having some technical difficulties. So when it gets back on, there's a special promo code. If you subscribe to the newsletter, you'll get the code, and you can save 20% off this book and any other new releases that Evening Post Books has out there.
So there you go, folks. Make sure you sign up for that to get your code, and maybe calm down and not break the internet. It's a good book and it's going to be great, but let's call it. Michael has broken the website. That's That's amazing.
Well,
That's so cool.
I didn't say that. Now, if you want to say that, then
I'm going to say it. I'm going to
You're
say
saying
it.
it.
Me and Shannon, we'll take the heat if anyone has a problem with it, but we know what the
Yep.
truth is.
You remember, was it Kim Kardashian's butt that they said broke the internet?
Yes.
So yeah, I don't know if what if there's any similarities at all there, but anyway. So.
Go ahead, babe.
Oh, what was it? Me? Is it my turn?
I'll go. So also, you have a podcast. Why don't you tell us about your podcast?
Yes.
Which is on Apple Podcasts. Go ahead.
Oh, great. And I'm so new to this. I always forget. I've done entire lectures and classes here lately, and I always forget to mention the podcast because it's so new to me. I don't think of myself as a podcaster. I've always wanted to be a storyteller, and through my work as a historian, as a volunteer for USC Salkehatchie, which is our community college here in this area, we dabbled a little bit in storytelling, and I kept hearing people when I first made the first TV appearance, and remind me to circle back and tell you about all these TV things. When I first made the initial TV appearances, people would comment that they like my voice and they want to hear me tell more stories. And I never thought I had anything other than a country voice, Southern drawl country. But I said, why not? I've got some stories to tell. So I partnered with a couple of very nice people, and there's a lot of stuff out there, a lot of drama around this true crime community. I don't take sides. I judge people on their work, and I judge people just about how freaking nice they are. And Matt Harris and Seton Tucker, just some nice people. And I just reached out to him and said, hey, I'd like to start my own podcast or be a partner in a podcast, but I know absolutely nothing about the technical stuff. I don't even know how to program my phone. My wife does that stuff for me. And, if you guys can help with the technical stuff, I'll tell some stories. And the Wicked South podcast was born. We've had some rough sounding episodes in the beginning, and we've had some really great episodes with some really crazy stories. I shared some stories about a couple of rambunctious young men that would trade a possum or a raccoon for moonshine with the old bootlegger that lived in the woods. We've just had some just crazy, unique stories that you probably won't find anywhere else. We're working on some amazing stuff for the new year, but the Wicked South podcast, it's growing and growing. We haven't made a dime off of it yet, but we're having a lot of fun.
Well, guys, they're sharing the link. Make sure you're checking it out, giving it 5 stars, like we always say. We don't know how the algorithm works, but that helps it. Got a comment here from Kathy. Great interview, Jay and Shannon. I love Michael's accent. And then I see on Kick, I can't highlight it, but Debbie says, I could sit with him for hours on a front porch with lemonade. So people love to hear you. Go ahead, babe.
That's what I was going to say is, has anybody reached out to you, or do you have any plans for doing an audiobook? For doing an audio version?
People keep commenting, yeah. Got a lot of comments on social media about people asking about doing an audiobook. We just released the paperback version of The Fall of the House of Murdoch, where there's talk about doing the hardcover next, within the next few months. And we're certainly talking about an audiobook, and the readers and listeners want me to do it in my own voice, but it sounds like a whole lot of work. So I don't know if I want to do it or not. It sounds like hours in a recording studio, but I guess maybe when the print sales start to die down and they want to reach a new market, we'll probably circle back and do that. Maybe in a year, few months.
So I'm curious. You kind of mentioned this, like if this will ever end. I'm curious what the thought is down there in that community, where it just seems like it will never end. We keep getting all these new updates. Looks like we might have another trial. Like there's, there's so much. What is it? What is it like? Like did you probably thought it was over, right? That you got the trial, might be over, but now it's like it seems like it will never end. What's the thought down there in that community with all this news that keeps coming out almost daily, weekly? I mean, it's crazy.
Well, And when we say the community, all right, now a lot of the drama now is centered over in Colleton County, which is one county over from Hampton. We're all in the 14th Circuit, but if you recall, Moselle was a 1,700-acre estate that straddled Hampton and Colleton counties. So the home site and the murder scene was right across the line in Colleton. So the trial and all that was held in Colleton. But Alex and his family are very much Hampton County people. Um, it's a little weird here in Hampton for me. I've made a lot of new friends and readers through nationally through covering this case. I've kind of lost a lot of local friends, or I guess they were never friends at all, but local acquaintances here in Hampton, because I've been writing and covering this case for so long. Even before the boat crash, we were covering the Murdaugh saga. The editors before me for decades, and this is one rumor that I kind of want to dispel while we're talking about this. It's been said that this kind of was covered up here in our area, but that's not the case. I've gone through the historical archives and the newspapers, and the editors that came before me were writing about the Murdaughs and telling the community, hey, there's something shady going on here. Hey, Buster's been accused of another crime. Buster's been accused of moonshine bribery and things of that nature. But when you're a small weekly community newspaper and the readers, keep voting the same people back into office every 4 years, there's only so much a small community newspaper can do, you know. And so, just like I began doing 20 years ago, the editors before me wrote about the law firm, wrote about how we were named a judicial hellhole because of the law firm, and how the law firm kept major retailers and major industry from coming here because people were afraid to get sued. We wrote about all that stuff before the world heard of Hampton County, before the world heard of the Murdaughs. And sadly, it did not take journalism to bring this family to the attention. Now, journalism played its role, certainly. It took blood to bring this family to the world's attention. Sadly, it took Mallory Beach going in the water and being missing for a week. It took a mother and a son murdered feet apart. It took Alex Murdaugh on the roadside faking his own death. Or his own attempted suicide. It took those things to spark the media outside of Hampton County. That's when the narrative began to change. That's when things began to change. So, to circle back to what we were talking about, Hampton is very much a conflicted area. I still do business at Palmetto State Bank, where Russell Lafitte was the CEO. I still go in there from time to time and get a few icy looks, a few icy stares. It's not the same warm, friendly
Wow.
place it was for me. I was at a trick or treat event here on Main Street in Hampton. I just noticed that fewer people spoke to me, fewer people talked to me here in my own hometown, where I used to be, you know, everybody, hey, there's the editor of the newspaper. Hey, how you doing? I just noticed just people's attitudes are still kind of very much. They know the Murdaugh family in some way. They're connected in some way. They're connected to the law firm, the bank, and so it's been a little different here in Hampton than anywhere else. Um, but as far as the story, it seems like the story now is once again centered in Colleton County, the jury tampering allegations, the ethics complaint. Uh, So yeah, I'm afraid this story is never going to end. I'm going to be writing about this thing forever. Uh, I've got job security whether I want it or not. So um, that's the case. But it's and here in Hampton it's more emotional. But the real story now is going on in Colleton County.
Let me just highlight this. What Kim Ned Smith, one of Michael's podcast names is Modern Day Moonshine Memories with Dr. Kenny Kinsey, uh, who is just the greatest. That I got to check that out. Tell us a little bit about that.
Kenny Kinsey's a great guy, and I shared this story on the podcast, and I probably shouldn't have. But his mother His mother was a police officer here in Hampton, and um, I've only I've only been arrested a couple of times in my life. In my younger days, before I became a journalist, I was arrested for a couple of minor offenses, nothing violent, nothing of that nature. Um, the but and I only spent one night in jail. But Kenny Kinsey's mother arrested me, and actually helped me get back on the right path. I kind of quit some of my rough ways, went back to college, became a journalist, and I owe it in part to that encounter with law enforcement. And one night in the Hampton County Jail, I realized, hey, I'm not cut out for a life of crime, you know. Well, I met Kenny Kinsey during the trial, and he says, "You're from Hampton." Well, you know, my mother was a cop in Hampton. And when he told me who his mother was, I couldn't help but tell him that story. I said, "Man, your mom put the cuffs on me one night, and you know, it kind of made a difference and changed my life." And uh, he said, and this was right before the trial was about to start. Judge Newman was coming into the room. We all had to hurry and run to our seats. And he said, "Hey, I want to talk to you after this is over. I've got to hear that story. We've got to talk." And we became great friends. And this episode was about we shared stories like that. That might have been the one where I shared the one that one or the one before I shared the story about the bootlegger trading a possum so that he wanted to eat for moonshine. But Kenny Kinsey was involved in a big modern day moonshine bust in Orangeburg County. So he tells stories about what it's like to bust these modern day moonshiners. And he's got a great sense of humor, and he tells some stories. So that's a really good episode.
You guys got to check that out. So make sure you're checking out The Wicked South on Apple Podcasts and giving it 5 stars. Go ahead, Dave. Sorry.
He when he was on with us, he kind of told us a similar thing. We said, "How did you end up in law enforcement?" And he said, "Well, I was either going to end up in law enforcement or I was going to end up behind the other side. I was going to be behind bars." So he kind of told us that maybe you had a similar past as him. Kind of
You're in a small town.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. We have a little bit of a time delay between us there. You live in a small town, and I saw a video on TikTok. I've become hooked on TikTok videos thanks to my wife. I saw a video on TikTok where a woman said, if you're from a small town, you're either going to be hooked on religion or hooked on meth. And so, yeah, there's not a whole lot of opportunities here. You're either going to be a preacher, a cop, a teacher, or a criminal. And luckily I found there's only one journalism job in Hampton County. I'm the only reporter, editor, writer for the Hampton County Guardian. I'm a staff of one. So if you want to be a paid writer in Hampton County, I'm the only person holding that job down right
now. Well, you said to circle back. Let's circle back. Let's talk about some of your TV appearances.
Yes.
We wanted to circle back to that.
Yeah, and not so much to talk about the TV appearances, but the whole environment and the way it happened. When the boat crash happened, our company kind of went through a change. We were bought out and by a bigger media company. The Hampton County Guardian was bought by a bigger media company. So when the boat crash happened, I wasn't just writing for the Hampton paper. I was now writing stories about the boat crash for the Savannah, Georgia paper and the Augusta, Georgia paper. And so I just happened to get a larger audience about the same time this big story happened. So I was doing my job, but once the boat crash happened, media, I used the word media, like I'm not one of them, but the media just descended on Hampton, TV reporters, John Monk from the state paper came down, and I met him for the first time. And, Dateline, Court TV, all these people started sniffing around. And I'm a small town I almost said backwoods guy, I don't like all this attention. I was kind of in a strange place. I did my job. I reported on the story, reported the facts for newspapers in 2 states. But I had no interest in getting on national television and talking about this, because when all this went away, my my family was kind of warning me. This was before the murders. Just the boat crash was the only big development. My family was telling me, hey, when this story goes away and all these people go back to New York and back to California, we still have to live here. We have to make sure we're safe here. So I did my job as a journalist, and I wrote about these people, wrote about these events, but I didn't go out of my way to get on national TV and talk about my neighbors and talk about these things. So I turned down interview after interview. I turned down 48 Hours, Dateline. I don't remember who came first. I turned down Court TV, all right up until the murders happened. And I was asked early on to write a book about all this, and I turned down that opportunity. Remember, I'm a humorist. I'm an outdoor writer. I'm a fiction writer. I don't give a damn about true crime. I'm not writing a book about all this. I was a historian. So the murders happened, and about that time, this media company sold us to an even bigger media company. We're now part of Gannett. We're part of the USA Today network. So now I find myself writing not just for papers in South Carolina and Georgia, but I'm writing these Murdaugh stories for the whole USA Today network. And that was a change. If you don't believe in evolution, you try being a weekly small town writer and evolving into a daily journalist, and you'll either sink or swim. And I'm 51 years old now. I'm too old to do anything else. I'm gonna write till the day I die. So I chose to evolve into a daily journalist. And uh, but then my company, this wonderful company, Gannett, found out that I was turning down Dateline and turning down Court TV, and my phone started ringing, and but I wasn't in trouble or anything. They basically told me, said, you know, you are the man on the ground, and nobody knows this story like you. Other people from around the world are telling your community story. Are they telling it right? If anybody should tell your community story, it should be you. And so they talked me into it. They even convinced me to go ahead and write that book. Our corporate office, people in California I'd never even heard of, that were in our company's corporate communications office, were wonderful. They contacted me and said, hey, if you want to write a history book about what this is doing to your community and about all of this stuff, we'll help you. We'll find you an agent. We'll write letters and book proposals. We'll help you. And they were true to their word. I chose to um, start doing these TV interviews. I chose to start working on this book project. I'd already started on Wicked, Hampton County, a few years before, and that's a whole nother story. But I went ahead and finished Wicked, started on Fall of the House of Murdaugh, and I agreed to these TV interviews. And the very first one was 48 Hours. And once I did CBS 48 Hours, they just started coming one after the other. It was 2020. It was Dateline. It was Netflix. And when I started this job 20 years ago, I had anxiety about public speaking. I hated to talk to people. I would stand in the corner of a room and take a picture for the paper and then run out and leave. And so I wouldn't have to talk to people or sit down and eat at a fancy awards banquet. So all that changed, and I found myself doing these interviews, and I just had one goal in mind. I wanted to represent our newspaper well, and I wanted to represent our community well. I tried to tell the truth. I tried to, if I didn't know the answer, I told them, hey, you have to ask somebody else. I don't know the answer. If I knew it, I'd tell them, here's the facts. And by all accounts, everybody I've talked to says, hey, you did a great job. My company has been delighted in how I represent the Guardian, Gannett, the USA Today network. It's been a struggle. I mean, some of these TV interviews take all day long, and then you still have to go and do your job as a writer, work weekends to make up for it. But I've tried to basically be a factual journalist, tell the truth, and tell my community story.
Oh, that's amazing. Boy Mom says, I can't wait to hear his podcast. Missy says, me too. I can't believe I've slept on this. A lot of people are just saying they love your storytelling. Raul says he's my long lost twin, ethical, big fan. That's a high compliment from Raul.
Right.
Um, I'm curious of this. So you mentioned that when you first went to the trial, you saw some of these folks from out of town, and you like had this like idea in your head, like, the first of all, I hate these Yankees. By the way, I'm from New York. I'm from New York, and I hate the fucking Yankees because I'm a Mets fan. So I hate the fact that I'm referred to as a Yankee. That drives me bananas. But I'm curious. You had a chance to meet some of these folks, and it kind of, changed your opinion. A lot of the folks probably in your town, or in their area, may not have had that same experience that you have. So has the fact that like people have come in and then shot out of there, has it made that feeling stronger? Get these Yankees out of here. This is none of their business. This is our story. You had the opportunity to maybe meet some of these folks, and maybe some of the locals didn't. So I'm curious, has that changed at all? That feeling?
Well, first of all, I apologize for use of the word Yankee there.
It's okay.
If
I'm
you
kidding. It's okay.
uh,
I'll mess with you.
if you take anything from this, I want you to know I don't use that word anymore. I don't think of outsiders that way anymore. This whole trial has introduced me to a world outside of Hampton County, and I can't speak I can't speak to how other locals feel. Maybe the town people and the townsfolk, maybe the townsfolk in Walterboro are glad to see the media circus leave and glad to see all the out of town journalists leave. But I stay in touch with a lot of these people. They didn't just go back to New York and California. I mean, um, it used to be, and this is kind of funny, if I ever got a phone call and my phone said New York, I just assumed it was spam and I never answered it. Now I get New York calls and California calls all the time, and I answer them. And I've got these people in my contact list, and I hear from Dateline. I hear from these people just almost on a weekly basis, and they don't want anything. Just say, "Hey, we're checking in. How you doing?" And we talk. And uh, the funniest thing in the world is I became friends. There were at least four people there during the trial who were writing books about this. One of the guys is author Surf. He's from Paris, France, and he just published a book in French about the Murdaugh murders. Um, but we called it Author's Row. I sat with Valerie Bauerlein and Jason Ryan, and we were writing. Their books haven't come out yet. Jason's coming out in April. We're writing very similar books. They're doing the same thing I am. They're not doing true crime necessarily. They're doing historical and true crime, which is what my book is. So we're competitors. We're competing. We're doing the same type of book, covering the same story, and lo and behold, we became friends. We have a group chat on my phone. Is called Authors Row. I don't know what it is on their phone. I named it Authors Row. They might uh, Valerie might just put the ugly dude who sat next to me in court, but um, the so authors row, and we touch base, and we kind of, if one of us is, it's like an emotional support group in this group text. If we get stressed out about stuff, chatter on social media, or the biggest thing is we're stressed out about this story. How do you tell this complicated story? How do you tell a story that never ends? And we share a few things, nothing that'll give away our secrets and what we're doing, but we share a few things. We lean on each other, and it's the oddest thing in the world, but we are an authors group of competitors who just I can't wait for their books to come out. Their books will probably be greater than mine. um, the I'm hoping that one day we can do a book tour together or a book event together, um, but just that's just an example of the kind of people I've met, and just wonderful people, talented writers trying to tell a story. And I just happen to be the only writer who is embedded in the middle of this story. And I happen to have just a little bit of talent where I can write about it. And I can't wait to see what these guys are going to do with it.
Go ahead, babe.
Well, I just think that that is such a neat thing because you realize that there's enough for everybody. And there is, especially with this story, I definitely can read 3 different books about this story because you're each going to come at it at a different angle, even if you're telling the same, set of things of occurrences. And with you, it's just got all of the inside information, and it's from someone that grew up, right down the street, and you never left. You never, moved away, and you're recalling from way back when. You're still in the present there. So I think that you are selling yourself short if you're saying you just have a little bit of talent and their books are gonna be so much better than yours. I think all 3 of the books are gonna be just amazing. And I'm
Well,
getting your book very soon, so I can't wait for it to come in the mail.
well, good, good. Um, I am not a very competitive person, and at times it makes me not a good journalist. I just don't have that competitive streak. I'm too Southern. I'm too laid back. Uh, I tell my wife all the time she would be a better journalist than I am because she has an inquisitive mind. She doesn't just accept things at face value. She always asks questions and digs deeper. And I'm too laid back and Southern to be a really good journalist. I'm not competitive. I don't try to be the first one to get the scoop. Uh, but I do have this streak of vanity where I don't care who gets the story first. I don't care if I want these other writers and other authors and other journalists to do good. I want other podcasters to do good. That doesn't bother me. I don't compete. That I don't care about any of that. Um, One thing that does bother me though is it kills me to know that my voice is lost in a wilderness, if that makes sense. There are hundreds of people writing about this Murdoch story. I don't care about being first. Don't care about being best, but I want to be unique. I want to stand out.
Mhm.
So one thing I've tried to do in my reporting and in this book is while every journalist in the English speaking world apparently is trying to get the next scoop, trying to predict what's going to happen next. I was one of the few journalists, I think John Monk was probably the only other person who took a deep look back at this family's history. So while great journalists, better investigative journalists than I, are writing about the next scoop, I'm writing about historical features about Buster Murdoch being wrapped up in a federal court case for moonshine that Hampton County people knew about for decades, but nobody else in the world knew anything about it. I was the only writer to write about the Murdoch women. I wrote a whole piece for the USA Today network, got more than 100,000 views in the first few days on the Murdoch women. And I think I led with the premise behind every great dynasty are the wives and mothers who helped build it. So if I can't be the best investigative journalist, I want to be the best storyteller and the best historian out there. And that's what I've tried to do. I don't like to compete. I guess back to that vanity. I want to be special. I don't like to compete, so I do my own thing. And um, I don't know if that's good or bad. You probably wouldn't want me on your baseball team or your football team, but for a writer, it's a solo business, so I think I'll be all right.
I think so too. Viv says, Lewis Grizzard said there is no such thing as being too Southern, to bring it back to Lewis Grizzard. Debbie, Bo Peep, Debbie says on Kick, he's amazing. By the way, Debbie sent us a $50 Venmo. Thank you so much, Debbie. Miss
Oh, thank
Lisa
you.
A says, I absolutely love Michael's story of personal growth and expansion of his mindset. So lovely and heartwarming. So you gotta, if they weren't your fans already, I think you have a bunch of new fans
Oh, thank you
here.
all, guys.
Um, so I guess let's. I can't believe it's already been an hour. You've been amazing and blown us away. We could probably have a whole other hour. What I want to know finally is, tell us the best way. How can we support you? We could, you have the book, the podcast. We can give it 5 stars. What else? What can we do to support you?
Well, we I don't. I appreciate the thought. I don't want to ask anybody to do anything. But if you want to buy the book, we appreciate that. Evening Post Books is the best way to do it. It's already on Barnes and Noble. It'll be on Amazon here in the next couple of days. But when you buy directly from Evening Post Books, our how can I say this? Wicked Hampton County was published by a national publisher, international publisher, the History Press, Arcadia, and I'm proud of that. But I chose Evening Post Books because they were a Southern publisher. I'm telling a Southern story here, and this company is based in Charleston. It's affiliated with the Post and Courier newspaper, who also covered the Murdaugh case and did some great work on that. Um, so when you buy directly from their website, then you're doing more of your dollars go to the small businesses, the small publisher, as opposed to if you buy from Amazon, then less so. Which Amazon's great, wonderful, we love them, and we're going to be on there in a day or two. But yes, support your local authors, not just Michael Dewitt, but any struggling local author. We are looking for sponsors for the podcast. We've got, and this is kind of a funny story. We have Dr. Kenny Kinsey is one of the sponsors of our podcast, and we've got two moonshine makers, two modern day moonshine makers are our other sponsors, Palmetto Pride Distillery, and that makes Palmetto Pride moonshine here in the upstate, and Rotten Little Bastard Distillery right here in Beaufort in the 14th Circuit. They make all kinds of craft whiskey, and so we're kind of heavy on the moonshine sponsor, so we need a good lawyer or a bail bondsman or a good mega church to sponsor us, so we don't look like a bunch of moonshine lovers here.
Chico's bail bonds, like in why am I Bad News Bears? Apparently, I pronounced that name wrong. Teresa's mad at me. It's Grizzard. Is it
Grizzard.
Grizzard. I'm sorry, yeah. Yankee ruining things again.
Well, I'm too polite to correct people, but it's Louis Grizzard and Murdaugh. Never say Murdaugh.
I don't say it right. I say it wrong. Murdaugh. So it's Murdaugh. Like, why do I struggle with that? Murdaugh.
Hey, like I said, nobody ever heard of Murdaugh until all this happened. So you can't be held responsible.
So up until this point, folks, the person who just started this thing by saying, if it wasn't for Murdaugh, I've this entire time, and it's Murdaugh, like D-O-C-K, Murdaugh, and I got that right?
Well, and I don't blame people for that. I mispronounce names and words all the time, but even here in Hampton, I've heard people say Murdoch and Murdaugh. And I don't know if there's a difference between any certain family members or what, but I've heard it pronounced two different ways right here in Hampton. So I think you can forgive yourself, but you do need to get Louis Grizzard right, though.
Grizzard, yeah. And also, so it's Alec, right? Not Alec is the correct way to say.
That's another minor thing. His name is Alex. His full name is actually Richard Alexander Murdaugh. He's Alex, but his family and his close friends called him Alec. That's just his nickname. Where you might call your brother Jim or Bubba or something. Alec was just a family nickname. So I've never called him Alec because I wasn't his close friend. I wasn't a relative. I knew his daddy better than him. I covered his daddy in court cases. I spent a lot of time with his father. I didn't want to know Alex that well, so I call him Alex.
Joni Beyond Kick says, Michael, I have enjoyed everything you've done since I've learned of you from the trial. You be you. Too many have lost themselves in all of this. That's from Joni. And then Michelle says, my book is on the way. Excellent. Love to hear that. So how we usually end these interviews is we I don't have to tell you, but I had never heard of Bo until let's get out of here. I had never heard of Bo until we heard that story about Alex going up to Mark Tinsley. Hey, Bo, I heard you. Whatever his quote was, so we now have J Bo Nation, which you said in the beginning. Some folks in the South say we can't use Bo. I think hopefully it's okay with you. So we could welcome you to J Bo Nation. All these folks that are here and follow us, are going to support you because you are now a member of J-Bo Nation. You're on here. We really appreciate you coming on. You're a very humble man, we can tell. Funny, insightful. You're awesome. And thank you so much for coming on. Babe, do you have any final thoughts?
No, I'm just so glad that you took a little bit of time out. I know that a lot of people have probably wanted to talk to you because, your book just came out in paperback on Friday. And so just thank you so much for spending an hour with us. It means so much to us.
Well, I want to thank you guys. You're helping me um, uh, make new friends and readers in places outside of my little corner of South Carolina, and I greatly appreciate that. And if if I take anything from this whole experience, maybe the people watching can take this. Is like you say, you're talking about Bo. You've learned something new about our Southern dialect, and I learned something new about people from outside of the South. Is just keep an open mind. Try to do the right thing. If you're going to be a journalist, try to be professional, polite, represent your community well, represent your family well. If you're going to be a YouTube star like you guys, just tell the truth, do the right thing, have an open mind, and always be looking to make a new friend. I mean, that's kind of what I've learned from this is do the right thing, treat people well, and make new friends. And the world's big enough for all of us. And never forget that these are real people we're talking about and writing about, and try to take care and how you handle their stories.
Well, again, thank you so much for coming on. Guys, in the description is the book. Get the book. Check out the podcast. Give it 5 stars. And that's it. So thanks, everybody. Have a good night. And that's it. Good night, everybody.